Salutations and good vibrations, family. Today I have some information that will be very helpful and powerful into the way you see life and your perspective of life. Welcome, family, to another session of dissected soul, this versus that. Today's topic is conscience versus consciousness. Before we get started, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our content. We appreciate the love and attention we're receiving from the diaspora and those who have subscribed. We thank you for your support. Okay, to start off with the topics of today, with this conscience and consciousness. First of all, let's get into the definition of each so we have a foundation of where we can start. Now, the definition for the word conscience is listed as a feeling, as an inner guide to that which is right or wrong. That is the definition of conscience. The definition for consciousness is the state of being awake and aware of one's surroundings, responsiveness and alertness, which is being aware of what's going on around you. Consciousness emerges from the brain's operation. So what we've derived from the definition of the two, of conscience and consciousness, is that one is a feeling and the other is an awareness of brain activity. So now that we have a foundation, we can start our session. And it's much easier to start with conscience, being that it derives from a feeling of that of being right or wrong, which acts as a guide to our decision making. So my opinion of conscience is that which is based off your moral values. A conscience that have a loose moral value system would not be as aware or feel as inhibited as that of a person who has a very distinct or very disciplined sense of morality. So much of this is based on the construct or the family system or family structure in which you were raised, or the people you were around during your rearing. In a family where the family smokes, where the mom smokes cigarettes, this is an example. In many cases, many of the children will feel there's not anything wrong with that, being that their parents raised them as smokers. Now, understanding that the children, as they grow up, will have their own acknowledgement of what they experienced, will have their own choices as they become adolescents and adults. But going back to the basis of the origin of the question, if these parents raise these kids smoking cigarettes, the children will not necessarily look at that habit as a bad habit until they receive contrary information via school, church, or other parents who do not smoke. And this is usually a trait that travels with the family. Now, dealing with conscience has a lot to do with your feelings of whether you're right or wrong. It comes down to the basis of looking at any act or action and judging it by those standards, right or wrong. And many of those right or wrong standards are based on your experiences while growing up, and those who put rules and regulations, or you are around situations that had its own systems that will subject you to certain yes and no in that society. A conscience also gives us a sense of judgment to where we can look at situations and be the God of that situation. Much of the conscience is dealing with judging yourself when there's an action you have done or that you have received or you have experienced. And you will judge that by those standards in which you have ingrained in your person. Now, when dealing with the conscience, the thing that gets us in trouble is if we're reared or we were brought up and raised with those odd moral values that is not mainstream America or mainstream culture. As we look at those habits to where it's just our family that does that, or the family you live that does that, society will look at you with strange eyes because it's not the norm. It's not something society is familiar with. Or it could be a taboo situation. And this is many cases where there's pedophilia, there's molestation, and there's a lot of bad habits in which there's drug use. Many cases can be pyromaniacs. And these situations and habits must be addressed because they are out of the mainstream and out of the norm. These unusual habits give us signals that there is much more profound damage done to that individual, or the lifestyle of that individual is not of the norm. The conscience also gives us signals into understanding empathy of a person as they are with their feelings when it comes to dealing with other people, other lives, and pain and suffering. Conscience tend to be a gauge into understanding if this person cares or not. When a couple meets for the first time, the conscience usually shows its empathy when dealing with a person and their feelings. And this is one of the criteria that is unconsciously focused on by a party who is seeking for affection or love. And in conversation, whether directly to the person or to a third party after the meeting or date, the person will usually say to their friend or person they're conversating with that the person they met was cold. If a person can't feel your empathy and feel your warmth, which is the basic measure of if you understand or care about people, then they will consider you a cold person. Many times, if it goes deeper than that and there's something much more profound or something much more grave, they will say you are soulless and that you have no soul because you do not show empathy to your fellow man. So when dealing with the conscience, this is much more profound than we thought. This is much more important when dealing with relationships and interacting with people than was first observed. Very interesting. Well, thank you for listening to the first half of our conversation, which is dealing with the conscience versus the consciousness. So we'll be right back after this message. We would like to take this opportunity to request that all of our listeners and viewers share our content with at least 5 people you know. We would like to grow the Dissected family and the Dissected kingdom so that we can bring you more entertaining content by being able to live stream and monetize our channel. We have only been active for a few months, but we have much content for that time limit. So let's grow the Dissected kingdom. Thank you in advance. Pharaoh J. Dissected. Okay, welcome back. Now we can jump right into consciousness, which is one of my favorite. Consciousness is dealing with the awareness of what's going on around you, whether it's interacting with people or what's going on in nature. It's a connection which is emotionally and psychologically with nature. Understanding the laws of nature puts you in connection to how these forces move and interact with your action. Many people think that consciousness is just the understanding and knowledge you gain through books. It is far beyond that. Books are limited to the information placed in them. They are limited to the boundaries of cover to cover. They really don't go too far beyond that. Consciousness has an unlimited amount of knowledge. It's like having a library that forever is expanding. And we tend to limit ourselves when we go into certain religions rather than dealing with consciousness. Consciousness is not bound or limited by the thought of man. Listen to that. The books we read and what we were taught growing up with religion is only encompassing the thought and mindset of those people who were writing it. So it's limited to the thought that encompass those people who were writing. So consciousness goes beyond what you normally think. It goes far beyond normal thought. It goes into the belief and understanding of things that are far beyond the consciousness and understanding of man. It is out of this world, literally. As in our other two videos stating why we can't talk to aliens, to reach consciousness, it says that you have to reach theta waves, which is a brain frequency, brain wave. And to reach consciousness, you have to get below 7 hertz. So this triggered me to wonder why we were told that God's number is 7 when you need to get below that to reach him. Going 6 and below, getting into theta waves, gets you into an area to where the mind is past the hypnotic stage. The mind is in the conscious and the out-of-body experience stage. In this particular stage, you're separating your mind and body to reach the 5th dimension, passing through the 4th dimension. It gets deep, family. This is very interesting. So we were taught to pray, which only go to 7 hertz. You have to get past 7 hertz to get to consciousness, where God lives. 7 hertz only puts you in a hypnotic state to where you can receive suggestive thought, implanted words, images, and sounds. You can be instructed what to do in a hypnotic state. Once we understood this process, now I understand in every case why when I speak to any religious person, they are very reluctant or reach barriers to continue conversation in an open sense. And they tend to grab onto the response of that is their religion and that is what they believe, but do not continue to explain why they believe that. It is very possible, and there is evidence that at certain frequencies and the brain waves can block certain memories and aspects of your behavior to the point where you are unaware and can't explain why you are doing something or why you believe something. It is just what it is. And this is because of the frequency, sounds, and implantation of information being placed in your mental thought process. This answer was being sought by many. And this is one of the triggers that we stumbled upon during our research and studies. So consciousness is very profound and has an endless depth and perception that is limited in books or the thought of man writing in books. So what you read in books from cover to cover is only limited to the capacity of the man who wrote the book. But as you deal with spirituality and consciousness, it is unlimited. Not only a connection to frequency, sounds, and brain waves, but also the vibrations and laws of nature that deals with the outside world. Everything living is governed by these laws. So in comparison between conscience and consciousness, one is an understanding and awareness. We're dealing with people, nature, or yourself. The other seems to be a feeling, which is an emotional feeling when dealing with right and wrong, making you the judge when dealing with those particular actions or action. Well, we're going to cut it off there, family. So this is another great session. Today's topic, conscience versus consciousness. Great topics. So I look forward to seeing you again during our sessions with Dissected Soul, this versus that, where we discuss contradicting topics and a comparison basis for understanding and learning when dealing with our world. We are very thankful for the time you share with us, and let's grow the Dissected family. So don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our content. Thank you for listening. Love, peace, and power. Pharaoh J. Dissected.